Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we are here to talk about some brand new products from Juvia's place. So if that's something you're interested in watching, then you're in the right place. We're about to get into it.
I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf.
Alright guys, so we have a lot of products to talk about today, not just the foundation and the concealer by Juvia's Place, but we also have a new palette. We also have a highlighter that I picked up, and I do want to talk to you guys about all of those products today. So I do want to go ahead and get started so that this video doesn't end up being an hour long, because we all know that Erika loves to talk. So beginning with the foundation, this was a highly anticipated launch by Juvia's Place. Everybody knew they were going to come out with a really inclusive shade range. It does have 44 shades. They are split out into quadrants ranging from very light to deep dark. Undertones look really nice. The formula itself is supposed to be a matte formula, and it's also marketed as a full coverage foundation. So this is what the component looks like. It is this beautiful kind of bright orange coral kind of color. I do really like the color itself. I think it's really pretty. The color just kind of pops a little bit. Nothing really spectacular about the component. It's just like a squeezy tube, so it just has a flip top. I'm not a huge fan of the top. I wish this was more of kind of that pointed taper dropper design, because this whole cap situation here can get a little messy as the component gets a little older, but at the end of the day, they really did just kind of save on outer packaging, because I think they did put a lot of work into the formula itself. There is a lot of pigment in this formula. This is incredibly full coverage, so I think in order to keep the price point down to that $20 price point, they made some smart decisions when it comes to the component itself. So that's kind of the price you pay for having a $20 foundation. I actually like that $20 price point, especially considering that you do get a full fluid ounce here. Most components and most foundations are marketed at 1 full fluid ounce, and this is 1 full fluid ounce of product for 20 bucks. And I love that. I think they've made it very affordable and very attainable for everybody. So I really like the price point on this foundation. Now, they do market this as a velvety matte foundation. My opinions on this foundation. Actually, before we get into my opinions on this foundation, I did get 2 different shades, and I know a lot of you guys are actually looking to get this foundation, and you're really kind of curious about the shade range. It's sold out on Juvia's Place very quickly. However, it is launching online at Ulta. It should be launching, I think it's launching after this video goes up, because the launch date is either June the 2nd or the 3rd at Ulta, and this video should actually be going up around that time frame. So you should be able to pick these up at Ulta, but they did sell out really quickly at the Juvia's Place website itself. I got $650 and $600. I got Cairo and Alexandria. So let's take a look at the components up close here, and let's go ahead and take a look at these 2 swatches just so you guys can see the undertones that I got. So again, guys, this is a 44 shade line that is broken out into different quadrants. You have very fair, light, you have light medium, medium tan, then you have dark, and then you have really deep, rich dark. So each one of these quadrants has their own undertones. They have cool, they have neutral, they have golden. So there are several different undertones to choose from as well. I did get, again, I got Cairo, and I also got Alexandria, and if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure both of these are neutral undertoned. So yeah, these are the 2 that I picked out. Now again, this is supposed to be a velvety matte foundation, so you are supposed to have a very matte finish. It's also supposed to be really high coverage, and it's funny because When a lot of brands market their foundation as a high coverage formula, oftentimes all of us are like, well, it's probably a medium and we'll have to build it up to a high coverage foundation. That is not the case with this foundation. This foundation is so pigment intensive, it is crazy. It really is very, very a full coverage, high pigment formula. So I'll show you guys application here of when I actually applied the product onto my face. Now keep in mind, I shade matched myself online, and this ended up being a little bit too light for me. I am going to probably have to go up a tone or two just to get a little bit deeper. But this is going to give you a good idea of what the actual coverage is like. So I'll show you that here. One thing I also noticed about application is going from using a brush to a sponge. I actually had a harder time with a brush because once this formula sets, once it kind of dries down, it's difficult to move around. Applying it with a damp beauty blender, while it does shear the formula out a little bit, that added moisture that your damp beauty blender is giving the foundation allows for a little bit more playtime when it comes to blending the product into the skin. So my preferred method with this product is actually a beauty blender. For me, that just worked out better. But again, keep in mind with a beauty blender, you may have to actually use a couple of layers in order to get that really high coverage. With a brush, you're going to get that full coverage beat in one layer. So that's just the difference. But my preferred method is with a beauty blender. Now, I will say this. If you are, I would say if you are combination to dry, this is probably not going to be the foundation for you. I am a combination girl, and this foundation was way too drying for me. I actually had to go in and really hydrate my skin. I had to put an oil on my skin. I had to really put moisturizer on my skin. I even hydrated in between layers of product with a hydrating setting spray as well, in order to be able to wear this throughout the day without having it get really matte and start breaking apart on me in different areas, just because it's so drying, and because I don't have a lot of natural oil production in my skin. As the product dries up, you start seeing like breakaway spots throughout the day, which, you know, isn't a cute look. So for me, the formula itself is just a little too dry, which is unfortunate because the coverage out of this is amazing. But if you're an oily skinned girl, then I think you're gonna really, really like this foundation. It is a very dimethicone top heavy foundation, so there are a lot of different silicones and dimethicones at the top end of the ingredients list, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but some people are a little funny when it comes to silicones or dimethicones in their foundation. I mean, it's pretty much in all foundations, so I personally don't have an issue with it, but there are people in the community that look at a very dimethicone heavy or silicone heavy foundation as a comedogenic product that's going to have the possibility of clogging your pores up. But at the end of the day, it's a foundation. You're not sleeping in it. Make sure you wash your face really good at the end of the night, and you should be good to go. Other than that, I think it's a very nice foundation for oily skin girls. If you have oily skin, give this a shot. It is a beautiful finish. It is incredibly high coverage. It's $20 for a full fluid ounce, which I think is amazing. But yeah, overall, I think if you're oily, this is going to be a great foundation for you. Also, if you happen to have really deep dark skin tones, then there are a lot of undertones and a lot of realistic and really well thought out undertones available for you at the top end of this line. So if you are anywhere from deep tan all the way up to deep dark, you really are going to have some good options when it comes to this particular formula. However, if your combination to dry, this is probably going to be a skip for you. All right, so next up, let's talk about the concealers. So I did get shades 18, 19, and 20. These are called the I Am Magic Concealers by Juvia's Place. Again, it has the really cute coral accent on the component. It matches with the foundation tubes quite well. I think that's actually really super cute. They do have a doe foot applicator that is quite large. The actual component, you guys, is quite large itself. This actually holds 10 mils of product, which is a huge amount of product for a concealer. So just to give you some perspective, this is actually 5 mils of product. This is the Milani Conceal and Perfect, and this is 5 mils. So you actually get twice the amount in this concealer right here. So you actually get quite a bit in here. Now this only retails for $14. So again, they've kept the price point on this incredibly reasonable, and I really like that. Now when it comes to ingredients, well, before we get into ingredients, let's actually take a look at the component up close, and I will swatch out shades 18, 19, and 20 for you guys just so that you can see what those shades look like. So we'll start with shade 20. This is supposed to be for medium skin with warm golden undertones. And then we have shade 19, which is supposed to be for medium skin with neutral undertones. In my opinion, both of these are incredibly light to be marketed to medium skin. And then, of course, we have shade 18, which is for medium to tan skin with golden olive undertones. And, of course, quite a jump from shade 19 to shade 18. There is quite a significant jump there, and I think my actual concealer color is somewhere in between those two shades. So I don't feel like there is a shade for me included in this particular concealer line, but that's okay. I did still give this concealer a shot, and I will say this about this concealer: while it is not as pigment intensive as the foundation is, it still is a really nice full coverage concealer that is going to conceal and cover any kind of dark spots that you may have, or dark circles that you may want to try and cover up. This is going to do that for you beautifully. It also is not as matte and as incredibly drying as the foundation itself is. It's a little bit more of a satin type of feel to it, so it doesn't feel as drying underneath the eyes, but it does dry down to more of a natural matte finish as opposed to like that velvety matte finish that the foundation dries down to. This is more of like a natural matte finish. Not quite a satin finish, but not like as drying as like a flat matte finish. It's kind of in between those two somewhere. Now the first ingredient in this concealer is actually a really long word. It's called hydrogenated polyisobutane, and basically what this is it's a synthetic oil. It's something that people use instead of using mineral oil. They use this instead, and that's actually the #1 ingredient in this concealer, because I was wondering why it wasn't as drying as the actual foundation itself, and I think that's why, because it has that that synthetic mineral oil as the #1 ingredient. And I don't want to say mineral oil because there's a reason why they use that instead of mineral oil. People just don't like mineral oil. It's a cheap emollient, it's a cheap moisturizer, and it's not overly good for your skin either. And there's a reason why people kind of avoid it in their cosmetics and in their skincare. This is just a synthetic version of that. I don't necessarily know if that is any better or worse, but it is the #1 ingredient in there. So I think that's why it's not as drying as the foundation is. It actually feels a little less drying underneath the eye. For me personally, this just wasn't my favorite concealer. This one for me settled into my fine lines and wrinkles a little bit. I just wasn't a fan of this concealer, unfortunately. I was much more of a fan of the foundation, even though it's not one that I would wear because my skin type doesn't necessarily match with the formula. But that doesn't mean that somebody with oily skin cannot enjoy that foundation, because it's a beautiful formula foundation. So I can appreciate something that's not necessarily made for me. And this concealer, I actually was really hopeful because I saw that it wasn't as drying as the foundation was. I saw that the coverage was still pretty significant when it came to pigment, but it just moves around too much for me as far as like throughout the day. It doesn't move around on the face, so it's not like once you put it on, it doesn't like move around your face, but it does settle. So you'll notice that it's kind of sitting in those fine lines. For me, it creased up throughout the day, and I have to put a little bit of powder underneath my eyes to keep it from doing that. But even with just a really light dusting of powder, it still moved around on me. Now, you can prevent it from doing that, but you really have to pack the powder on underneath your eyes. Unfortunately, I can't do that. If you can bake underneath your eyes, or if you're comfortable with really baking underneath your eyes, then you may be able to get this to work for you without the creasing and the settling into fine lines and wrinkles. Because again, I'm not an oily girl. I don't have to use a lot of powder on my face, especially underneath my eyes where I'm super dry, because that just further dries me out. So I feel like, again, if you're an oily girl and you use like a lot of powder to set your foundation and to set your under eye area, then setting this concealer might actually do the trick for you, and you might be able to pull this concealer off. By the time I was done testing out this concealer and this foundation, it was very clear that this entire product line was made for people that have oily skin, or that have a little bit more combination to oily skin. So if that is you, then I think you might really enjoy these complexion products from Juvia's Place. Unfortunately, they're just not for me. So as far as whether or not they're Erika approved, the products are Erika approved if you have oily skin. If you don't, I wouldn't recommend them. All right, next up, let's talk about the highlighter. Now, this is an oldie. This is just one of their highlighters that I wanted to try. I had never tried any of their highlighters before, so I just wanted to get a hold of one and see if I liked it. Now, I got the Heroin Glow 2 by Juvia's Place. It comes in this really cute component. It's like having a jewel in a box. I love that. I think that's actually really, really cool. I'll give you guys a close-up of it here. Of course, it has that really cool coral component to it. This is a baked highlighter. It's actually made in Italy. It has a really cool consistency. It's incredibly soft. It's very luxe. I absolutely love this highlighter, you guys. This one is a big home run for me personally. I'll show you guys here. I've had this on all day, so by now it's probably worn off a little bit, so I will put a little more on. It is just a beautiful highlighter. It's not something that's like you're going to put it on and it's going to be like overly icy or anything like that. It is just a really pretty natural highlight, and I think it's stunning. I just love it. And it has this beautiful kind of pinky peach undertone to it, and it's got some warmth that's kind of marbled throughout the baking as well, which just brings like this little bit of a bronziness to the cheek. And it has a really beautiful when you shift your head, the way it catches the light is stunning. The profile of the product, you don't see any kind of a white cast or anything funky on the side of your cheek, and that's something that I'm always picky about when it comes to my highlighters, so that's a really good thing. But if you've never checked out their highlighters, you guys, this is really, really pretty. I've actually reached for this a lot this week, so this is definitely Erika approved. I love their baked highlighters. Up next, I do want to talk about their brand new eyeshadow palette that has come out. This is the Nubian 3. This is, of course, their coral version. This goes with the theme of all of the other components. I think all of the design of all of these are really complimentary. They look beautiful sitting on your vanity. I do love the color theme throughout. Now, this palette retails for $20. They have sales on these all the time. Eventually, you could probably get this for around $14 in a couple of months. But it does come just like the rest of their palettes do. Beautiful shades, you guys. These are corals, browns, some really pretty cool tone silvers and grays, you guys. This is a beautiful palette, especially when you do like the half and half looks. If you put this silver like on the first half of your eye and then bring out these corals and browns out towards your outer V, these are stunning shades. They complement each other very, very well. Whoever curated this palette was very, very smart with the placement of these colors. They're not necessarily colors that you would think would be complementary, but they absolutely are, and they're not necessarily colors that everybody has in their collection. A lot of these cool tone grays and silvers are very hard to find. You don't see them done well in a lot of eyeshadow palettes, and everybody knows the Juvia's Place eyeshadow formula is stunning. So let's take a look at this up close so you guys can really see what this looks like. So again, this is the Nubian 3 Coral. This retails for $20. This is a very new and a much softer take on the entire Nubian series. This is what they consider to be like their coral paradise. It is, again, a beautiful mix of corals, peaches, grays, browns, warm and cool toned colors in this palette. I absolutely love this palette. You have a half and half split of matte to shimmer, which I absolutely love. There are a couple of different formulas in here. Some of these are mattes. Obviously, half of these are mattes. And then you have some that are like really pretty soft kind of shimmers. This peach here has a beautiful kind of silvery shift to it. But then you have other ones up here like this silver that are much more of like a metallic type of formula, but they're all stunning, absolutely stunning. Let's go ahead and get into the swatches because I really want you guys to see the swatches on these. So let's get into the swatches here. So aren't those swatches absolutely stunning, you guys? For those of you that have never played with a Juvia's Place palette, this is a great one to start with. You're guaranteed to get colors that you don't currently have in your collection with some beautiful finishes in here, and you'll make some really, really pretty looks with this particular palette. Of course, as always, Juvia's Place is cruelty-free and the formula is amazing to work with. This is a very, very beginner-friendly formula. The colors blend themselves. You don't have to do a lot of work to get the metallics and the shimmers to really pop. They really pop with a dry brush or a wet brush. You can use glitter glue or not glitter glue in order to put the metallics on the eyes or the shimmers on the eyes. The longevity is fantastic. It's a great formula. They're known for their formula, and this one is no exception. I have really enjoyed this palette, even though I've only really had a chance to wear like 3 or 4 different looks. I like the looks that I got out of this each time. I love the way that it lasts on the eye. It's still nice and vibrant by the end of the day. Juvia's Place just has a great eyeshadow formulation all the way around. It's what launched their brand in the first place, and there's a reason why everybody loves their eyeshadow palettes, and this is no exception. This is genuinely a stunning palette, you guys. I really, really like this palette. This is absolutely 100% Erika approved. I even think it's worth the $20 if you don't want to wait for it to go on sale. It'll absolutely be worth your spend. Again, you get 12 shadows in here. The pans are fairly big. It'll last you a long time. Has a 2-year shelf life. Everything about it is fantastic. So this is absolutely Erika approved. Overall, you guys, the entire collection, there was a couple of hits and misses for me. Obviously, the eyeshadow palette being my favorite piece in the collection. I think the concealer was probably the biggest letdown for me, and I wish the foundation just wasn't as drying as it is, but it is what it is. One thing I did try, and I will say a note to self, one thing I did try was I actually mixed my moisturizer in with a little bit of that foundation, and I just kind of used it as like a BB cream. Because the pigment in it is so heavy, you actually get a good amount of coverage by just mixing a little bit of that inside of a moisturizer, and then, you know, you have hydration and you don't have that kind of matte craziness happening on your face where you have that really heavy dry down. So it worked that way for me. I enjoy wearing it that way. When I get foundations that are overly matte like that for me, that's how I continue to use them and they don't go to waste. I'll either add them to a moisturizer, or if you guys watched my last favorites video, you know that I really like this Kosas, which is their tinted face oil. Adding a couple of drops of this to a foundation that's really matte heavy, it makes all the difference in the world. So this actually works really well in combination with this too. And I have worked with it and blended with it several different ways, simply because I'm so impressed with the amount of pigment that's in it. It is such a high coverage foundation that I really want to try and find a way to make it work for my skin type. So I have played with it a couple of different ways in order to get it to work. But I mean, you know, at the end of the day, it still is a pretty formula. You know, I think it's just going to be perfect for people that have more oily skin. So that is it on that. Let me know what you guys think about the brand new products from Juvia's Place. Let's get a conversation going in the comments down below. If you are new here, welcome. I'm so glad that you came by. Feel free to hit the subscribe button before you leave. As always, I hope all of you guys are very happy and very healthy. And I will see you guys in my next video. Mwah.